Welcome back everyone. Today we are diving into debugging and error handling section of our course. We've covered a lot of ground so far, but there's still more to explore. In this section, we will break down topics into two parts. Debugging in VBA. Debugging is all about identifying errors in your code to pinpoint their root causes, allowing for effective fixes. We'll review the various methods for debugging in VBA, which will serve as a refresher for those who have been following closely. Next, we'll tackle error handling. Error handling in VBA helps us to anticipate, detect, and resolve errors that occur during code execution. We'll delve into some of the most effective error handling techniques. That wraps up for what we have in store for this session. Let's jump right in and get started. So I have a fresh workbook opened, and we'll get on to debugging. Alright? Debugging. Alright. So there are various ways of performing debugging in Visual Basic application. Okay? And we have seen literally all of them. Okay? Literally all of them. For those of you who have been paying attention, this is just a refresher. Okay? So remember, very early on during the lecture, I mentioned something about option explicit, right? Option explicit to make sure that we are able to identify any errors that may arise from incorrectly naming the variable. Well, that's exactly the first type of error handling that we're going to discuss. Okay, so I'm just going to open a sub procedure. I'm going to call it option explicit, all right? Option explicit debugging, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to name some variables, dim A as long, dim B as long, and then I'm just going to have the A typed out as AA instead, right? So what do you think we're going to get when the code is run? Okay, so we're going to hit the code. By running the code, we're just going to hit F5, or you can just run it from this icon right here. Okay, so I'm just going to hit this, and as you could see, we are getting a pop-up alert. Okay, compile error, variable not defined, right? So that's exactly why we have the option explicit. Okay, it's a form of debugging that is extremely useful to help us identify any variables that may have been mistyped. Okay, so always make sure you have this option explicit, and I've gone through how to make sure that you have these options checked. To options require variable declarations. Check this prior to opening any module. Okay, and you should be able to see this wording on the top. Okay, so that's pretty much on the first type of debugging. Now the second type of debugging, which we have gone through a lot, is step into, right? We're not running the code, rather we're stepping into each line of the code. Okay, F command to step into each line of the code, right? So how are we going to illustrate this? I'm just going to have dim A as long, right? And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say A equals to 5, and then A equals to A plus 5, and then I'm just going to say A equals to A plus, I'm just going to add it with some string. Okay, I'm just going to add it with some string. So I know this is going to result in an error, but nevertheless, I want to make sure that we are able to see it in real time as we step into the code, right? So we're going to step into the code by hitting F8. So we step into the first line, no errors whatsoever, A is long, and A is a number here. And then we're just adding A by 5. No errors here. So we're getting into this line. And right after this, we should be seeing an error. See? We have a runtime error 13 type mismatch. Okay? So I've quickly identified the line that is giving me an error, which is this line. Okay? Which is this line. So when I'm on the line, I'm on this line of the code, right? As soon as I see the yellow highlight, which means the code is not running. This line is not running, but it is going to run in the line once the yellow moves to the next line. Okay, so that indicates that, well, this is run. But when we are on this line, right? So if I'm on this section, this line where the line is being highlighted in yellow, the code is not run yet. But as soon as I hit F8, this has run. Okay, this is run. For instance, A equals to 5. Now A is equals to A plus 5. But A is still going to be 5. A is still going to be 5 here. But when I hit the next line, A is going to be 10, right? A is going to be 10. Okay, so just keep that in mind, right? So that's the second type of debugging. We've gone through that as well. We've seen a lot of examples previously. The next example, right? Also something that we have worked through. That's the breakpoint. Okay, right? I've shown you how to add breakpoint. So we use the F9 command to insert breakpoint. Okay, we use breakpoint to jump directly to the section we are interested in. Okay, basically, I know that this section of the code is not giving me any error. So instead of stepping into each line of the code, I might as well jump right to a section where I think there's going to be a problem. All right, so let's just have an example. Right, dim as WS as worksheet, and I'm just going to dim A as long, dim B as long, and then I'm going to say A equals to 20, B equals to 50, and then I'm just going to add something. A equals to A plus 20, B equals to B plus 30, and then I'm just going to say set WS equals to, I don't know, maybe I'm just going to put something like 40 or whatever. Okay, so I've run the code and I'm getting an error. So now what I want to do is, I know that, well, this section here, there's not going to be a problem, but we might have a problem here because I know that this is an object variable. So instead of having actually something like sheet 1, I've actually assigned a number variable into the worksheet object type of variable. So I know this might be a problem, but I'm not sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit F9 to insert a breakpoint. So I'm not gonna stab into each line of the code up until the breakpoint. I'm just going to run it. Okay, well, it's already giving me a mismatch. You see how effective VBA is. All right, so I'm just going to change it to sheet 1. Okay, I'm just going to change it to sheet 1. I've inserted my breakpoint, and then I'll just run the code. So it's reached the breakpoint, right? It's reached the breakpoint, and then I'm just going to hit F8 again to step into the code, and then I'm going to see the results of WS. I'm going to be able to see the results of WS right on the locals window. Okay, oh, you can use whatever, debug.print, whatever, right? So you're able to see, or you can just hover over the variable. We'll go through all of that in a while. Okay, so I've jumped right directly to the section where I'm interested. Okay, that is basically what I'm trying to explain here, why we use breakpoint. So to clear the breakpoint, all I have to do is just hit on this button right here, right? This red button, and it's going to get cleared. Okay, so that's about it for breakpoint. Okay, so as you could see, there are so many ways for us to do debugging on VBA. VBA has made it really easy for us to write codes and to identify errors that arise in the code. But you have to know the tools that are available. Okay, so that whenever you have errors, you're able to quickly pinpoint them and get right onto the fixing and get your code running. Okay, so that's the whole idea of Visual Basic application. Okay, it's about simplifying your life, saving time, and ultimately increasing efficiency. Okay, so I have two variables here. I'm just adding 10 maybe, and then I'm just B plus 5. Okay, so what I'm doing is we can actually just hover over the variable to see the results. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit F8, step into the code, right? I'm gonna see A, well, A is 0 because we're not moved to the next part yet. Now A is 80, B is gonna be 0 still. So now B is 10, and I run the code, and I run this section. So now I've added 10, so when I run this section, I know A, I'm just hovering over the variable. I can see A is now 90, right? B, well, B is still 10, but as soon as I run this line, we're going to see that B has turned into 15, okay? So we can just hover over the mouse, okay, and see the results in real time, okay? So that's an extremely convenient way of doing debugging on Visual Basic application, okay? Next, well, this is something that we've gone through countless number of times using the debug.print, okay? So we can use the debug.print on the immediate window, which means we can just copy the debug.print on the immediate windows, okay? However, the variable declaration line has to line, okay? So line has to run. Okay, I'll show you what I mean by that. Or we can just run the code on the code editor and see the results returning in the immediate window. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dim WB as workbook. Okay, and then I'm just going to say set WB equals to this workbook. Okay, so this workbook is just the workbook that I'm on, and then I'm just going to say debug.print WB.name, right? So there are two ways for me to use the debug.print. One way is I can just run the code and I'll see the results returning on the immediate window, right? That's the quick way, right? So another way, well, if your codes have too many debug.print on it and you don't want to get confusing, too many debug.print returning on the immediate window. So what you want to do is, well, you can just you can just hit a breakpoint here, right? You can just hit a breakpoint here, and then you can run your code. What I mean by breakpoint is I'm going to set a breakpoint onto, well, never mind. Okay, you'll just run the code here, right? So I've run the code. Okay, I've run this section of the code. So WB, I've run through the declaration. I have to make sure that WB has been run. So I've run this section. Now I'm not going to run this section. I don't want the results to appear in the immediate window. So I can just Control V this and I'll be able to see the results. Okay, I can just copy and paste it. Okay, right? So the reason why I mentioned the breakpoint earlier is because I wanted to jump directly, right? I wanted to jump directly, but there's no way for us to jump directly, right? Because then the next section after the declaration is the debug.print. Okay, so if I were to hit a breakpoint, right, you have to use it concurrently with other methods of debugging, right? We've seen a lot of examples previously. Okay, so if I were to hit a breakpoint here and I try to run it, okay, I try to run it, and then I can just Control C, and then I can just paste it right here, right? It's also giving me the same results. Okay, so that's how you use the debug.print, by either just running the code, returning the results in the immediate window, right? Or you can just copy, as long as the variable declaration line has run, and then just basically copy the debug.print into the immediate window to see the results returning in real time. Okay, right? So this are two ways for you to use the debug.print. Okay, so the next section, the locals window. Remember, locals window is array's best friend. Okay, so anytime you deal with arrays, make sure you have the locals window parked close to you, right? It has to be close to you because it's tremendously useful. Okay, especially when you're dealing with big arrays and you want to identify the elements in it, whatever, right? Whatever error that you may have committed, right? So I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to run it. Okay, sub function not defined. Okay, locals window, right? Well, I'll get to you in a second. Well, arrays actually should be array. Okay, so now all I have to do is I'm going to just reset the code, and then I'm just going to insert a breakpoint here, and then I'm going to run the code, and we're going to see the results returning on the immediate windows. Okay, so I can see 5. Well, R1 is missing. Why is it missing? Because I have a comma here. I have nothing, right? So I should fix it. I should have some value into it, and then I'm going to reset the code, and we're going to run it again, right? It's going to jump right to the breakpoint. I'm going to run it. I'm going to see the results of R. Well, R0, well, because it's a VBA convention, array starts from 0, the lower limit, and then 0 is 5, 8, 7, 10. Okay, so very basic stuff, right? We've gone through a lot of examples previously on the locals window. Next, the watch window. Well, this is something that we have also done, right? This is also something that we have done. So basically, sub watch window. What I'm going to do is we highlight. Basically, how this works is we highlight the variable of interest. We right click. We add to the watch. All right. So for those of you who've been using Excel, right, for the purpose of auditing a worksheet, I think you're aware that the Excel workbook, right, the Excel interface has a watch on its own, right? So I'm not sure. I hope I can find it, right? So it has a watch window on its own, right? So I'm not sure where it is, okay? And I'm not going to spend too much time looking for it. but this is something that is available on the Excel workbook. Okay, so right, that's okay, never mind. Okay, we'll figure it out later on. Okay, so the way the watch window in VBA works is we can dim A as long, dim I'm going to say A is equals to 20, right? And then I'm going to say A equals to, I'm going to add some value, I'm going to change the value along the way. All right, so you have to remember that variables are something that can change along the line. So you have another type of, not variable, all right? You now have another type of declaration, and that's a constant, right? So you have the word constant. So if you have a constant, the value is fixed and it can't be changed. Right? So it cannot be changed, right? So that's why we use a variable. I prefer to use variable because variable has the flexibility of being continuously changed. Okay, so it's more dynamic in the sense, right? So I'm just going to say A equals to A plus 90, right? So we have changed the value of the variable a couple times, okay? Okay, and that's perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, even before, I'm just going to right click. I'm just going to add it to the watch. Okay, so I'm just going to procedures the watch window, right? That's the watch window, module 1, right? And then I'm just going to add it to the watch. Okay, so you can see out of context, initially the value is empty. But when I run the code, I can hit F8. I'm going to see, well, A is now 20 here. A is 70 because it's added 50 onto it. Now A is 140. And then A is 230 because it's added another 90 onto it. Okay, so that's about it for the watch window. Okay, so the next line, the next section, we're going to go into the stop command, right? So this is another favorite of mine, okay? It's another favorite of mine, all right? Because it allows us to stop the code directly at the stop line, right? We use at the stop line, basically where we have the stop command, right? So it's extremely helpful, okay? Especially when you're not sure where to set the breakpoint because your codes may be too compact, right? And so the one line, you're just leading to the next line, right? And you're just like, okay, well, I have to make sure this runs, but and then I'm not sure if that's going to affect it, right? So if you have this kind of doubts, right, then you might want to use the stop command, right? So for example, I have A equals to 50, B equals to 70, right? So I'm just going to say A equals to A plus 20, B equals to B plus 30, okay? And then I'm going to insert the stop command because, and then have all the next statement, all statements run here, okay? Run here. We're not going to be interested in all the statements that run below. So we're just going to hit the stop and then we're going to perform our debugging, right? We're just going to run the thing and then we're going to hover everything, right? We're just going to hover the variables. We're going to see everything. You could see the results on the locals, right? You can also insert your watch to view the results. Okay, you can also have the debug.print and all the results prior to the stop command would actually be returned on the immediate window. Okay, so that's about it for debugging in Visual Basic application. So before closing off, let's look for the watch window. I'll get back to you in a second. The watch window on the Excel editor. Alright guys, so the watch window is located on the formula tab, right? So you have the watch window here, right? So that was what I was looking for a while ago and I couldn't find it. Well, we have found it. So the watch window, we also have a watch window on the Excel workbook, right? So it functions pretty much the same as the watch window on Visual Basic application. Alright guys, that's about it for debugging in Visual Basic application. In the next section, we'll be going through error handling. Okay, see you.